It's considered a huge diplomatic win for India. The Crown Prince of the United Arab Emirates will be the chief guest at the Republic Day Parade event. Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to the UAE and henceforth the visits that we've seen from the UAE have been significant. I'm being joined by the Ambassador of UAE to India, Ambassador Albanna. Many thanks for joining us, sir. It is indeed a pleasure. This is a considered a huge diplomatic win for India to have the Crown Prince himself grace the occasion of Republic Day. What is it? What are the big takeaways that we can expect and that are to come during his visit?
We're actually honored and grateful for the invitation that His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, Crown Prince of Abu Dhabi, Deputy Commander-Chief of the Armed Forces of the United Arab Emirates, that he has received from the government of India for him to be the chief guest during the Republic Day of India on 26 January 2017. The relationship, the bilateral relationship between United Arab Emirates and India has taken a different track. You mentioned the visit of Honorable Prime Minister Modi, August 2015. Then the visit of His Highness the Crown Prince in February 2016. Those two visits, I think, put the two countries on a different track, more of strategic track. The relationship has always been there. The trade relationship, the tourism, the visit of individuals, the cooperation on many different traditional levels has always been there. But since those two visits, I think we have shifted to a completely different relationship, more of a strategic relationship. And I think this relationship will be fruitful and will be beneficial to both countries, United Arab Emirates and India.
What are the kind of agreements that are expected to be signed, and is there going to be a forward movement when it comes to strategic cooperation between India and UAE?
So far we have almost 16 agreements already signed with India, between the United Arab Emirates and India. The main agreements, the main pillars of the agreements, like the avoidance of double taxation, like protection of investment, like the aviation, like the cybersecurity, like the currency swap, and so many important agreements. And these agreements, I think it will be crowned by the major agreement which will be signed on 25th of January 2017, and that is the strategic agreement between the United Arab Emirates and India.
That's a very big point that you make, Ambassador, sir, the fact that there is going to be strategic cooperation between India and the UAE. This is only second of its kind. We'll be seeing the UAE Armed Forces march alongside the Indian Armed Forces during the Republic Day Parade. Is that a sign and a symbol? And it's not just optics, but that there is going to be real-time cooperation, strategic, so to say, between the two countries?
Of course, on many different levels, on exchange of information, security, defense, counter-terrorism, cooperation in the fields of renewable energy, cooperation in the field of aerospace, cooperation in the fields of research and developments, and the IT industry. The prospects are huge and immense. The governments are working to facilitate the interaction between our private sectors, between our companies, between the institutions in the United Arab Emirates and India. I really think since the visit of our Crown Prince, February 2016, lots of things has happened. Things has taken place that it was even beyond my thinking at certain times. But I believe that when there is a will, things happens, and the chemistry, I would believe, the chemistry between our leaders has triggered this great cooperation.
We will be talking about the security and strategic cooperation in depth, but let's just focus a little on trade. There is a lot that has happened. India is one of the most important trading partners of the UAE and vice versa. In terms of labor, in terms of trade, what is the kind of forward movement? There have been some concerns, but there has been a forward movement and positive response from UAE that India has received. So what can one expect?
Let me start by saying, if we look at the trade figures, the bilateral trade figures between UAE and India, 30 years ago, the total trade between UAE and India was $128 million. 2016 figures is $50 billion. India is trading partner #1 for the United Arab Emirates. We are trading partner #3 for India. But then again, I shouldn't stop there. I should say after who and who? After United States and China. So imagine the size, and the size of the economy, the size of the United States, China, and all that. And for the United Arab Emirates to fall #3 in the relationship with India, that means a lot. Now, $60 billion and improving. We have a great and a big, huge Indian community living in the United Arab Emirates, somewhere in the figures of 2.8 million. And those people who are there, with all respects, they have become part of our progress and part of wherever we have reached to, and we really appreciate that also. So therefore, as I mentioned, the traditional agreement, the traditional relationship has always been there. And now we are getting into a new track. Our cooperation in terms of different sectors. Oil and gas is one of the main sectors that it comes on the top list of our, but then again, it is important to India. But aside from that, there are other sectors that we are working closely with India. For example, aerospace technology. For example, renewable energy, and many other sectors. And I hope by the involvement of those sectors, those figures will go and will rise and will add value to the existing great relationship that we have with India.
This day and age, security cooperation has become very important. So we come to the point where we will be discussing strategic cooperation in depth. Our condolences to the death of the 5 UAE diplomats, and of course the ambassador was also injured in the Kandahar attack yesterday. That certainly goes to show that there is a lot that needs to be done in tackling terror. There are certain reports that have come saying and linking the Kandahar attack against UAE diplomats to Crown Prince's visit to India, saying that this is a hint of the discomfort certain countries feel with the closeness and the growing ties between India and the UAE. Would you agree?
Well, first of all, my condolences to the family members of those officials from the UAE who passed away during this horrible attack. Those extremists, these terrorist acts, we condemn, and we work very closely with many different countries all over the world, including India, very closely with India in terms of condemning those terrorism groups and condemning those terrorist attacks. Now, this piece of information, this is the first time I hear of it. No, I don't think it has any link, and our relationship Nobody dictates on us what we do and what we don't do. Our relationship has been great with India, and we will not, will not change our minds into our decisions in strengthening that. That attack just happened. It was a coward act by some group of people. The attack took place on some of our diplomats, including our ambassadors, going to do a charity and building a humanitarian mission in the city of Kandahar. We are still looking, we are still investigating, we are working very closely with the Afghanis, with the Afghan authorities, in order to find out who's behind this act of terrorism.
How is the UAE cooperating with India to ensure that no elements or people who work with Dawood Ibrahim get space in UAE?
We work very closely with India, regardless of the names, in terms of those people who have been classified as terrorists. They have been classified as people supporting acts of terrorism. We disseminate information to the Indian authorities. We exchange information to the Indian authorities. We have signed an agreement in reference to that, and there has been many meetings between the NSA and our United Arab Emirates NSA, and there has been a lot of collaboration in terms of trying to stop the act of terrorism, to stop those individuals whom support the different fanatics and different groups that have been pronounced by the international community as illegal groups, and those groups who are taking the lives of the innocent people. We try and we work very hard, and we coordinate our efforts with the Indian authorities to stop such actions.
Dawood Ibrahim, has there been any forward movement between India and UAE on that one particular person? I ask you this only because I know that people and the viewers would be interested in knowing what is it that the UAE government is doing with regards to India's concern.
Well, as I mentioned, regardless of the names, there is a process, there is a legal process, there is a judicial process, and there are agreements. There is an agreement signed between the United Arab Emirates and India in terms of the exchange of criminals and so on and so on. So regardless of the name, whether ABC or XYZ, we work very closely with India. We collaborate, and we are against act of terrorism. You mentioned something about ISIS. I refuse even to call them ISIS, because ISIS is a short of Islamic State. There is no Islamic link with those people. There is nothing Islamic with those people. They are just using the Islamic religion, the word of Islam, to reach to to their own goals, their own evil thoughts. Those that, whether Daesh group or whether, I don't know, the other groups that has been condemned internationally, and the United Nations has made a list of those groups that they are terrorists. We fight them, and we collaborate and cooperate with all the authorities in India or any other country to stop those groups and to minimize them and to sort of stop their growth. Because at one time, talking about ISIS, or I call them Daesh, they have, if you look at the composition of Daesh, maybe there are, few, very limited percentage from maybe the Arab world or, from the Muslims. But then the majority are non-Arab, non-Muslim. And this is something that the international community has gotten aware of. That's why you see a lot of actions taken against this Daesh group, and of course led by the international coalition and led by the United States of America.
Time to slip into a short break. When we return, we'll continue our conversation with the Ambassador of UAE to India on the strategic cooperation between the two nations. Very important point that you make, Ambassador, the fact that they're non-Arab and non-Muslims, so to say, particularly, of great interest. What do you mean by that? And are you seeing, is there intelligence to suggest that Daesh has spread its wings with other affiliates in the neighborhood, in this region as well, that there is a lot of intermingling, so to say, of these networks with the Daesh? And when you say non-Muslims, do you mean that there are people from other countries and from various parts of the world who are now part of Daesh?
Oh yeah, there are. This has been proven. There are people from many different parts. Daesh recruits their people from all over the world. There has been a lot of them coming from here and there due to certain situations, whether personal, individual, economic, and. The whole thing, we need just to look at it and to see that the goals of those people are evil. So therefore, we need to fight evil. We need to cooperate. We need to stand up against those people. Otherwise, the whole world will suffer. Innocent people will suffer.
We see that there is a coalition that has been formed to fight terrorism, particularly Daesh. It has been led by Saudi. Saudi Arabia has put up this coalition to fight the Daesh and fight terrorism. But interestingly, the man who's going to command this entire coalition is former Pak Army Chief General Raheel Sharif. Really not a comfortable position for India to see a coalition that is formed to fight terror being led by a man who India considers responsible for quite a few terror acts within India.
Well, that piece of information is new to me. I know that the coalition that has been formed, whether the international coalition in Syria led by the US and some other European countries, whether the coalition that has been created in the Arab world to fight those extremists, the goal is the same. The goal is to fight the evil thinking, to fight those people who went off track of humanity, the human aspect, and they've become just a different creature. So therefore, regardless of who leads what and who does what, we need to look at the main goal. The main goal is to fight those evil thinking. Now, whether this individual is leading a group of people and that individual at certain time was condemned for certain action, I don't know. But I know the main goal, and we work very closely with Saudi Arabia, with the other GCC countries, with some other Arab countries, with the Muslim countries, the Islamic states, in order to fight those extremists, those people who claim to be Muslims and to carry the the flag of Islam, and they are not.
How can India's voice be heard in groupings such as the OIC, where Pakistan does have a stand? How can India's voice and India's concerns regarding terrorism be heard? India faces a lot of acts of terror and faces it from across the border. Is there a way of reaching out to the Arab world, to the nations that are important players in the OIC, to put forth India's concerns regarding terrorism?
Well, terrorism and act of terrorism has been, discussed and talked about and on many different levels, whether on the bilateral levels between the two countries, whether on a multilateral, and when we talk about multilateral, we can talk about the United Nations umbrella, and then we can talk about regional umbrellas, regional organizations. Yes, we need to coordinate our efforts, and we do coordinate our efforts with India on whichever level, whether we talk about the multilateral, the international, the UN through its different organizations, or the other multilateral organizations, or regional, whether, let's say, the Arab League or the Islamic States, or yes, why not? It is the interest of United Arab Emirates. It is the interest of all the countries in this world. It is the interest of India to fight terrorism.
Finally, sir, before I let you go, there can be no good or bad terrorists. Most of the countries have voiced that. Even during Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to UAE, we saw the same kind of tone and tenor when it comes to fight against terrorism, that there can be no good or bad. But we see some countries taking sides with particular countries for political gains. Should that happen? For India, it is very important because India suffers from Pakistan. India has suffered at the hands of Pakistan. Afghanistan is suffering at the hands of Pakistan. Can there be good or bad terrorists, or should sides be taken then to protect a particular country when there's state sponsorship of terrorism?
Terrorism is terrorism. There is no good or bad. It's bad. Terrorism is terrorism. That's why the UAE is working very closely with many different countries, including India, in the definition of terrorism, to reach to a final agreed upon definition of terrorism. But the base, terrorism is terrorism. There is nothing called good terrorism. When you go and kill people, that's not, good. This is bad. So therefore, but at the same time, we need to look, we need to coordinate our efforts. We need to verify certain acts, acts of individual, or acts of a group, and acts of a larger group, and so on and so on. These has to be looked at very carefully and has to be identified. We condemn, and we in agreement, in full agreement, in India's effort to fight terrorism, to counter-attack terrorism. We do the same, and having said that, we work very closely to reach to the common goal of humanity, to have a peaceful world, and instead of accommodating those groups and use them sometimes as an element of what we call proxy war, or we need to eliminate that, and we need to make sure that we coordinate our efforts to be able to do that.
With the Crown Prince sitting beside President of India and then holding talks with Prime Minister of India, it seems like it is just beyond optics now that there is real-time cooperation that we will be seeing between India and the UAE. On that note, Ambassador Ahmed Albanna, many thanks for joining us. Indeed, a pleasure.
Thank you.